want to talk about integrity, something that literally fell in my spirit right upon opening my eyes on this morning. And for those of you in whom have already chimed in, of course, you would have already seen the title of the scope. It's just talking about be a man or a woman of integrity. And my question for the most part is integrity, has it been lost? Is it something of the past? And of course, when we speak in reference to integrity, we are talking about being men and women of God, of honesty. We're talking about decency. We're talking about fairness. When we speak in reference to integrity, we're talking about truthfulness, and we're talking about trustworthiness, honesty, integrity rather. Integrity is honesty. It's when you have that ability and capacity to operate in honesty and you operate in decency. It is when you have the ability and capacity to operate in fairness and truthfulness and trustworthy. And that's my question. Yeah, my question is, has integrity been lost? Is it a thing of the past? Not just where men and women of God are concerned, but where people are concerned in general, especially men and women of God. When we talk about integrity, integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. I'll say that again. Integrity is having the ability. Can someone put that definition up there for me, please, if you could? Could someone put that definition up there for me, please, if you could? Integrity, that's my definition. Integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you're going to do and follow through. Can someone write that for me, please, as soon as you possibly can? Integrity. I'll repeat it again just for the sake of clarity. Integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you're going to do and follow through. Depole, thank you, man of God. I appreciate you. Good to see you out there. But that's what integrity is. Integrity is having, thank you, Carol. Integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you're going to do and follow through. Did everybody get that? I'll say it again just for the sake of clarity. Integrity. When we talk about integrity, we're talking about decency. We're talking about fairness. We're talking about truthfulness. We're talking about trustworthiness. We're talking about honesty. When we speak in reference to integrity, integrity in its simplest form is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. Not only in its simplest form. Is that Dr. G out there? Bless you, Dr. G. Good to see you. What you doing up so early? Not only in its simplest form, but in its biblical form. In its biblical form. Watch this now, because I've got Bible on this. But in its biblical form, integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. It's saying what you're going to do and follow through. I will never tell a person that I'm going to do something that I do not have the ability to follow through with, because that's not integrity. I'm going to say it again. Never tell a person that you are going to do something that you do not have the ability nor the capacity to follow through with. If you don't have the ability or the capacity to follow through, don't say it. Because integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. And it is biblically founded. It is biblically founded in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 5, right about verse 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, right about verse 5. Can someone put that up there for me, please? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, right about verse 5, talks about integrity in its simplest form. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Someone type that for me and put that on the screen for me, please. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, right about verse 5. Ecclesiastes 5 and 5. Ecclesiastes, thank you so very much. Thank you, Minister Breeden. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Thank you, Daypole. Thank you, Victory _ Thank you, Prophetess Marva. But Ecclesiastes 5 chapter 5 says this. Listen to what the word of God says. And it is speaking in reference to integrity. It says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. That's integrity. It's talking about integrity. Listen to what it says again. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, right about verse 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 5 talks about having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. Ecclesiastes 5 and 5 says this. It says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. In other words, what God is communicating and what God is articulating is that never say that you're going to do something, but then turn around and don't do what you said you were going to do. That's what Ecclesiastes 5 and 5 is actually communicating and articulating. God says never make a promise. It's better, he says it's better if you don't make a promise at all than to promise to do something and not make good on the promise that you promised to do. Because then what happens, you put yourself in a dishonest posture. You put yourself in a fraudulent posture. You put yourself in a corrupt posture. You put yourself in an unfair, deceitful posture. You put yourself in a shady street kind of posture. People don't look at you the same. I tell people, listen, don't make promises to me that you know you can't make good on. Don't make promises to me that you know that you cannot make good on. You know, don't talk to me concerning something that you know you had no intentions on doing even before you said it. And it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a treacherous thing when you tell people, as a man of God and a woman of God, when you tell people that you are going to do something, and you know, as my grandmother would say, you know good and well, you had no intentions on doing what you said you were going to do, even before you said you were going to do it. That's fraudulent. That's corrupt. That's shady. From where I'm from, they call you straight up street. Somebody says, I've been guilty of that. Don't tell on yourself. Don't tell on yourself. Don't tell on yourself. I don't want you to tell on yourself. I want you to hear this because somebody needs to. I woke up with this in my spirit this morning, and once again, of course, if you know me, I'm not known to do early morning scopes. That's just it's just not my time. I'm normally a late night man, a late evening man. But when I woke up, this thing concerning integrity. This thing concerning integrity was so in my spirit, because when you do not operate in integrity, you start operating and you don't even know it. And listen, there are not only sheep who need to hear this, but there are pastors who need to hear this, because there are pastors across their own pulpits that are operating in dishonesty. When you do not operate in integrity, you don't even know it, but you begin to fall prey to a spirit of dishonesty. You fall prey to this fraudulent spirit, this corrupt spirit, this unfair spirit, this deceitful spirit, this shady spirit, this street spirit. And it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you are not operating in integrity as a man and woman of God. Say what you're going to do and do it. And it's, it's simple. Say what you're going to do and do it. I believe that, folk talk. It's like they don't have anything else to say, and I'm like, man, listen, if you're not going to do what you said you were going to do, keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. Watch this now. Especially when I didn't ask you to do it. Especially when I didn't ask you to do it. If I didn't ask you to do it, why volunteer? Are y'all with me? Somebody says sounds like wisdom. It is wisdom. It is wisdom. Especially, I'm going to say that again because somebody else needs to hear that. Especially when I didn't ask you to do it. I didn't ask you to do it. You volunteered to do it. You wanted to do it. You said that you were going to do it. Now, what you volunteered to do and you say you wanted to do, you promised to do, all of a sudden, like my little niece used to say, my little cousin rather, like my little cousin used to say, all of a sudden now, you've got milk of magnesia. She would try to say amnesia, and she said milk of magnesia. All of a sudden, you done got milk of magnesia. You done forgot. Praise the Lord, everybody. All of a sudden, you've got milk of magnesia. Something you've promised to do. Something you said you were going to do. Something you told me that you were going to do. And now you're reneging on what you promised. That is not being a man or woman of God of integrity. Dr. Felix, good to see you, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Listen, it's better to keep your mouth closed. It's better to keep your mouth closed. Listen, there is not a person who knows me. There is not one person who knows me that can tell you that Prophet Mitchell promised something that he didn't make good on. Not one person. There is not one person that can tell you that I promised or vowed to do something for them, but renege on the promise and the vow in which I made. There is not one person. Because I believe in operating in integrity. I am not going to tell you that I'm going to do something for you and then come back and shut the door on what I vowed to do for you. I am not the type of person to promise you something. I'm not the type of person to promise you something and then come back and not do what I promised. If I tell Minister Felix, hypothetically speaking, Dr. Felix, don't get excited now. Don't get excited. But if I say to Dr. Felix that before 12 midnight tonight, before 12 midnight tonight, I will have $2,000 in your account before 12 midnight tonight. Again, Dr. Felix, don't get excited. Now, I'm hypothetically speaking. If I tell Dr. Felix that before 12 midnight tonight, I will have $2,000 in his bank account, you had better bank on it that before 12 midnight tonight, I am going to have $2,000 in Dr. Felix's account. Dr. Felix say money coming to me now. But if I tell him that before 12 midnight tonight, I'm going to put $2,000 into his account, you had better rest assured that before 12 midnight tonight, Prophet Mitchell will have $2,000 in Dr. Felix's account. Even if it's 11:59 p.m. Even if I put it there at 11:59 p.m., it will be there before 12 midnight. Why? Because that's what integrity is all about. That's what integrity is all about. And I don't want you to think that I'm only talking money. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking integrity. I only use that as an example. I'm talking integrity because that's what integrity is all about. Integrity is about saying what you're going to do in doing it. Once again, I gave a definition of integrity earlier. When we talk about integrity, integrity is simply having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. Somebody needs to hear this. Somebody needs to hear this because you have been operating out of a spirit that's hindering you from receiving from God. Dishonesty hinders you from receiving from God. When you begin to operate out of a spirit of dishonesty, a spirit of fraudulency, when you begin to operate out of a corrupt spirit, an unfair spirit, a shady spirit, a deceitful spirit, and for some of you all that can't connect with dishonesty and fraudulent and corrupt and shady and unfair street, when you start operating out of this street kind of spirit, what you don't have an understanding of is that you close the door to what God wants to do for you. Or you close the door to what God has placed in the spirit of another person to do for you. See, watch this now. If I promise you that I'm going to do something for you, but yet renege on what I promised to do, which is not integrity. It's not integrity. If I promise you that I'm going to do something for you, but then renege on what it is that I want to do for you, then every seed that I sow has a harvest. This is good stuff. I know it's early, but this is good. I said, I know it's early, but this is good. Every seed has a harvest. So when I'm not walking in integrity toward you, someone else will not walk in integrity toward me. If I promise you that I'm going to do something, but yet don't do what I promised to do, then somebody else is going to come back and promise me something, and guess what? Not do what they promised to do. Why? Because every seed brings forth a harvest. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And I don't know about you, but that principle of sowing and reaping is so real. That principle of sowing and reaping is so powerful. And I'm not just talking about sowing and reaping where money is concerned. In the book of Galatians, God says this. He says, and be not deceived, for God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. Whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. And I'm going to say this because I just heard something in the spirit, and I didn't really come on here to prophesy. I really came here to teach. I didn't come to prophesy. Exactly, Dr. G. Exactly. In all things. In all things. It's not just a money thing, but in all things. I didn't even come here to prophesy. I came here to teach. I heard the Spirit of the Lord just say to me, be careful as to what you sow in this season and in this hour. Be not deceived, for God is not mocked. Here it is. Whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. Whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. Whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. You are not going to reap a different kind of that in which you have sown, but whatsoever a man sows, that same shall he reap. I am always, Dr. Felix, I am always, Dr. G, I am always mentally cognizant of what I sow. Because I have an understanding that whatsoever a man soweth, that same shall he reap. If you sow love, you're going to reap love. If you sow hate, you're going to reap hate. If you sow harmony, and if you sow togetherness, and if you sow unity, you're going to reap harmony, you're going to reap togetherness, you're going to reap unity. But if you sow division, and if you sow discord, you're going to reap division, and you're going to reap discord. Listen, for those people who are sowing discord and disharmony in division in God's house, you better be careful, because whatever you sow in his house, you reap the same in your house. So you can't sow discord in God's house and expect to reap oneness and harmony in your house. You're trying to sow seeds of discord in God's house, you're going to reap it in your own house. And you're wondering why things in your house won't come together. God says it's because of what you're sowing in my house. You've got to be careful. 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 I always try to walk in a spirit of integrity. What is integrity again? Integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. Bless you, Dr. G. Bless you, ma'am. It is having the ability and the capacity to say what you are going to do and follow through. Because I don't want to ever find myself promising you that I'm going to do something, but yet not following through with it. And then have people to come back and promise me something, but yet not follow through because of the seed that I sowed concerning you. Did everybody just get that? I'm going to say that again. I don't want to ever find myself promising you or promising someone that I'm going to do something for them and not do it. And then come back and have people to promise me they're going to do something and not do it because of the seed that I sowed concerning you. And here's reality. Here's reality. Here is where when you're not doing the right thing, where sowing is concerned. And when I'm talking about sowing, once again, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about everything that pertains life. I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about everything that pertains life. Here is the danger when you're not doing the right thing where sowing is concerned. According to the principle of agricultural, you will always reap more than what you sow. You can do one good deed and reap a multiplicity of good deeds from others out of that one deed. You can do one bad deed and reap a multiplicity of bad deeds because of that one seed that's been sown. Because you will always reap more than what you sow. I'm out of here when I say this. I'm out of here when I say this. Whatever you do, keep your word. Keep your word. That's all integrity is. That's all integrity is. Integrity is simply keeping your word. Once again, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 5 says this. It says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. In other words, the only thing God is saying, and I know that sounds deep, right? Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 5, that sounds deep. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than thou shouldest vow and not pay. That sounds deep. But the only thing that God is communicating and articulating in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 5, is be a man and be a woman of your word. That's all he's saying. That's all he's saying. Very, very shortly put, God is simply saying, be a man of your word. Very shortly put, God is simply saying, be a woman of your word. Listen, if you are going to make a promise to do something for someone, follow through with it. That's all Ecclesiastes 5 and 5 is saying. If you're going to make a promise, exactly, let your nay be nay and your yea be yea. Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to make a promise to do something for someone else, God says, listen, either follow through with it, because watch this now, because there's another option. There's another option. God says, either follow through with it or just don't make promises. Isn't that simple? Isn't that simple? That's simple. That's simple. God says, if you're going to make a promise to do something, he says, follow through with it. If you know that you're not in a position to follow through with it, God says, don't say it. That's easy. Listen, that's easy. Nothing deep about that. Nothing deep. Nothing complicated. Nothing mind-blowing. Nothing spirit-stirring. He says, listen, either do what you're going to say that you're going to do, or just don't say it. If I can't do it, then I'm not going to say it. If I can't do it, then I'm not going to say it. If I'm not in the position to bring you to the grocery store, then I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to bring you to the grocery store, because I'm not in a position to do that. If I'm not in the position to loan you $250 by Friday, then I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to loan you $250 by Friday, because I'm not in the position to do so. If you can't do it, don't say it. If you can't do it, don't say it. You know, there was a situation that even happened with my own a couple of weeks ago, where a brother promised to do something. Man of God, don't even want to call his name because it's not important. I'm kind of using this as a teaching moment. But he vowed to do something that he never did. And I never heard from him. I have never heard from him since he made the vow or he made the promise. And I think the thing that messed me up the most was that it was something that I never asked him to do. Yeah, he got ghosts. Yeah, don't see him no more. Don't hear from him no more. Yeah, he got ghosts. And the thing that messed me up the most was it was something that I didn't ask for. And I'm talking about a man of God. I'm talking about a man of God. I'm talking about a pastor of God. And like I said before, won't call his name because that's not important. I'm just kind of using this whole situation as a teaching moment. But he promised to do something and vowed to do something that he never did. And I tell I said the thing that messed me up the most was that you vowed to do something and promised to do something that I never asked you for. I never asked you to do this. You said you were led by God to do this, and yet didn't do what he said he was led by God to do. And now you no longer look like an integral man. Now you look like a dishonest man. Now you look like a fraudulent man. Now you look like a corrupt man, an unfair man, because now I'm starting to see you in a light that I never saw you in before, when it could have been avoided, because if you couldn't do it, then you just don't say it. Are y'all understanding? Do you see how simple this thing is? Do you see how simple this thing? If you're not in a position to do it, then you just don't say it. I will never say what I'm not in the position to do. Whatever you do, and I'm going to leave that alone. Whatever you do, be a man of integrity. Be a woman of integrity. Has integrity been lost in the church? Has integrity been lost amongst mankind, period? Integrity is simple. Dr. G said yes. Oh, absolutely. I believe it. I believe it. I kind of asked that question and threw that out there and kind of left it up to people to answer themselves. But absolutely, I asked it because I wanted to. And absolutely, it has been. It has been lost. Something as simple as that. It's been lost. Say what you mean and do it. If you're not going to do it, don't say it. If you're not in the position to do it, don't say it. If you don't have the ability to do it, don't say it. And I know that this is, it sounds like elementary teaching, rudimentary teaching, foundational teaching, but it's amazing how many people are not operating in what's elementary, what's foundational, what's rudimentary. Simple. What's integrity? Integrity is having the ability and the capacity to say what you're going to do and follow through. Ecclesiastes 5:5 says, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. God says, if you are not going to do what you say you're going to do, just don't say it. Bless all of you now, all right? Bless all of you. I am out of here. I am out of here. Normally, I would leave by saying, have an awesome day or have a wonderful day, but I'm going to leave by saying, have an integral day. Blessings to everybody. Bye-bye.